thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I particularly want to thank everybody who is a part of this package and standing up here with me today. I want to introduce Representative Robert Wittenberg, Representative Adam Zemke, Representative Sarah Roberts, and I am Representative Jeff Irwin. We are here today to call on Governor Snyder and Attorney General Bill Schuette to shut down the Straits of Mackinac pipeline. Right now in Michigan, we have a pipeline operating under the Straits of Mackinac, and that pipeline is carrying a tremendous volume of hydrocarbons, and it is in the worst possible place in the Great Lakes to put a pipeline. So today, Representative Roberts and I are going to be introducing a House resolution and a joint resolution calling upon our governor and our attorney generals as the leaders of our state to initiate the termination clause in our agreement with Enbridge. The state of Michigan currently has an easement with Enbridge that allows them to operate this pipeline under the Straits of Mackinac. And in that easement, it stipulates terms and conditions upon which the state can terminate that agreement. We, in our resolution, are calling upon the governor and the attorney general to initiate that termination clause. Now, the easement with Enbridge, it requires that they operate this pipeline safely and in accordance with best practices. It requires anchoring, it requires certain coatings and protections on the pipeline, and it allows inspections of the pipeline. None of that is happening today. And we have a 62-year-old pipeline in the worst possible place for a spill. And we've got the Coast Guard, who recently informed us that if there was a spill in the Straits of Mackinac, we simply do not have the capacity to clean up that spill. We would have an environmental disaster stretching from Brevoort to Beaublanc Island. It would be hitting shorelines all over the Straits, and we would have no way to clean it up in the open water and the complicated currents in the Straits of Mackinac. This would be an epic disaster for the state of Michigan. It would be an epic disaster for our multi-billion-dollar tourism industry, and it would be a horrible damage to our Pure Michigan brand. And I don't know about all of you, but this is a 62-year-old pipeline. I haven't quite reached that age yet, but I've heard that when things get to be 62 years old, they start to leak. And what Enbridge has experienced all over the nation is hundreds and hundreds of leaks and spills that have been reported. And we also know that right here in Michigan, we were on the receiving end of the worst inland oil spill in the history of the United States in the Kalamazoo River, with this very same company, Enbridge, that is asking us today, the citizens of Michigan, to simply trust them that this pipeline is still safe. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this pipeline. The governor and the attorney general created a task force over a year ago, and that task force met for 9 months. And after all of that talk, they came back with some very bold recommendations to form a new advisory committee and start more talks on what we might do to bring this problem under control. The time for talk is over. It's time for action. And when the Attorney General gave the report from the Pipeline Task Force many months ago, the Attorney General said this pipeline would never be built today. The current standards wouldn't allow this pipeline to be built. And he said, this pipeline's days are numbered. Well, we're here to ask the Attorney General, how many days do we have to wait? It's been 106 days already, and today we're here to let you know that now it's been 107 days since the Attorney General said that this pipeline's days were numbered. Now, usually when I tell someone that something's days are numbered, I'm usually thinking about a number that's maybe smaller than the number of fingers and toes I have. Not a number like 107. If the Attorney General wanted to be straight with the people of Michigan, he should have said, this pipeline's months are numbered, or this pipeline's years are numbered. By saying that the pipeline's days are numbered, I think it was a little misleading, and now we know it's been 107 days. And they've just now had the first meeting of the new task force to continue discussing what the last task force took 9 months to discuss. How can we get the Attorney General to pay attention to this pipeline? This is a serious problem. It's obviously going to create an epic disaster if there's a spill. It's been 107 days since he's called for action. How can we get him to pay some real attention, to initiate some real action on this pipeline? What do we need to do to get Bill Schuette's attention? Do we need to have a couple of same-sex marriages at either end of the pipeline to get the Attorney General's attention? The Attorney General has shown that he's willing to move mountains and write a blank check to stop people from having same-sex marriages in Michigan. Do we need to have same-sex marriages on the pipeline to get his attention to this problem? The Attorney General has moved mountains to try to fight against medical marijuana and marijuana legalization. What do we need to put in this pipe to get his attention to this problem? The Attorney General and the Governor need to act. We need the leaders of our state to be taking bold action on this problem. And to continue talking about the nature of this issue and why we're so concerned about it, I want to introduce to you my colleague, Representative Roberts.
Thank you. Actually, we're going to have Mr. Holtz from the Sierra Club speak next.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm the eye candy here, by the way. Yes, I'm Dave Holtz, and I'm here representing the Sierra Club. I'm their state chair, and I want to thank Representative Irwin and Representative Roberts for stepping up and showing leadership here today. We're part of a strong and growing movement in Michigan of people coming together, a citizens movement, to stop the flow of oil coming through Line 5 through the Straits. Let's face it, the possibility, as Rep. Irwin said, of a rupture in the pipeline built in 1993 is pretty high. And the negative impact of a spill under the Straits would make a catastrophic spill that happened 5 years ago in Marshall, Michigan, the Enbridge spill then. It looked like a stain on your shirt. I mean, this would be a huge, huge catastrophe for Michigan and the Great Lakes. But Michiganders love the Great Lakes, and by the thousands they're demanding that Governor Snyder and Attorney General Schuette shut down Line 5. So while the Attorney General and the Governor and too many other politicians in Lansing worry about offending the oil industry more than protecting the Great Lakes, even putting Enbridge sitting on a board yesterday, official state board, to help decide the fate of Line 5 in the Straits, Line 5 that makes millions of dollars in profits for them, and now they're sitting there representing the state to make a decision about what happens to the Great Lakes. The people of Michigan are speaking out in growing numbers. Their message is clear that the only way to prevent a catastrophic oil spill in the Straits is to end the flow of oil through the Straits. More than 150 small businesses have endorsed that request. They come from all over the state, from the Dearborn Sausage Company to Shepler's Ferry in Mackinac City. Not surprisingly, many of these Michigan businesses live near the impact area of Line 5, which, as Rep. Irwin just said, is a major wide impact area that goes from Lake Huron through the Straits to Lake Michigan because of the washer effect of the current in the Straits that transfers millions of gallons of water every day, and if there was a spill, oil, if there was a pipeline rupture. There are people like Rich Bergman, who is the CEO of the Lake Charlevoix Brewing Company up north, and he located his company in Michigan because of the water. Now Rich worries that his investment and his company are at risk because of two pipelines that should never have been constructed in the Great Lakes. Monday night, Rich's company is hosting a showing of a documentary on Line 5 in Charlevoix, and Rich is speaking out about the threat a pipeline rupture poses to our pure Michigan economy. It's because of Rich and hundreds like him, along with groups like mine and leaders like Representative Irwin and Roberts, that we have now put a national spotlight on Line 5 through the Straits, and we're making it impossible for Enbridge to hide this sunken hazard from the people of Michigan. And we're not going to stop until the threat of oil in the Great Lakes is gone. And that effort takes on many forms. A few months ago, Enbridge's lobbyists, working with some Republicans in the State House, decided to draft a bill to exempt Enbridge's pipelines and other pipelines, all pipelines, from the Freedom of Information Act. We made sure the public saw the proposal for what it was, an attempt to hide pipeline inspections and other information, not just on Line 5 through the Straits, but on the entire pipeline system and every pipeline in the state. Why, we ask, do they want to hide information on pipeline corrosion and structural integrity in a pipeline carrying millions of gallons of crude oil that was built in 1953? Maybe the answer is they don't want us to know just exactly what the condition of that pipeline is. To win, we're going to need help from the legislature, like the resolution we are here today to support. We need to close loopholes in our laws that sideline the state of Michigan, even on oil spill recovery planning and emergency response. Incredibly, there is no requirement in state law now that Enbridge even share its spill recovery plans for Line 5 with state environmental or emergency response officials. That's why we support the pipeline safety package proposed by Reps. Irwin and Roberts that will close these loopholes on pipeline safety, pipeline siting, and environmental protections. Today's resolution on shutting down Line 5 is another step toward holding Governor Snyder and Attorney General Schuette accountable for protecting the Great Lakes and ending the threat of an oil spill in the Straits of Mackinac. To discuss in more detail the impact a Line 5 spill would have on Michigan and to reinforce why we need to shut down Line 5 immediately through the Straits, I'd like to introduce Representative Sarah Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Holtz. Well, I'm Sarah Roberts. I'm the state representative from the 18th District, St. Clair Shores. And so it's very clear that we are calling for the closure of Line 5, and we all know that because the health and the vitality of our water is directly linked to the health and vitality of not only our economy, but to all of us. Much of the water that flows back and forth through the Straits of Mackinac, it does so at 10 times the volume flowing over Niagara Falls. 30 million people residing in the Great Lakes Basin rely on it every single day for consumption, recreation, transportation, and power. Every day, millions of gallons of oil flow through Line 5. And that oil is being carried again by a 62-year-old pipeline operated by Enbridge, the same company that was responsible for the spill in the Kalamazoo River in 2010. It was the largest and most expensive spill in U.S. history, allowing more than 800,000 gallons of oil to erupt into the river. It took nearly 2 full years of round-the-clock cleanup efforts, and it devastated 35 miles of river. Enbridge was fined $3.7 million by the U.S. Department of Transportation, and as part of that fine, they listed Enbridge having 22 probable violations leading up to that spill. Enbridge also, not so long ago, settled with the state of Michigan for $75 million. We don't want fines or settlements. We want to stop a spill before it happens. The life of Line 5 under the Straits of Mackinac is limited. And over a year ago, we introduced legislation addressing the safety and transparency for oil and gas pipelines, and we have seen no actions on that legislation, not even a public hearing. And earlier this year, as it was mentioned, the Petroleum Pipeline Task Force released recommendations, and some of them were specific to Line 5. And in some of those recommendations, they mirrored our legislation that we introduced over a year ago, and yet there still is no action. And after the release of this report, again, Schuette said, clearly today a pipeline like Line 5 would not be built. And experts agree that a spill from Line 5 would be disastrous for Michigan, our economy, and our environment. In 2014, a study was done by the University of Michigan, and they concluded that due to the massive fluctuating flows of the Straits, it would be the worst location in the Great Lakes for an oil spill to happen. And that is, in part why we are showing you this simulation today of what would happen if there was an oil spill. Again, the Coast Guard is not prepared to respond to an oil spill like this. And if it were to happen under ice, part of the reason we think it is so imperative to shut this line down immediately is what happens if that part of the Straits freezes over and there is a spill. If that happens and the ice is formed, we can't clean it up. And we cannot wait for an emergency to force us to act. So Governor, Attorney General, be leaders. We're calling on you to take the right and appropriate action. Line 5 under the Straits of Mackinac must be shut down.
Thank you, Representative Roberts, and thank you, David Holtz. And just finally, I want to direct all of your attention to this fancy simulation that we're running over here. We're always trying to find new ways to impress and encourage our friends from the media to pay attention to what we're doing here. And so we brought in a video board. I don't know if you find any interest in it, but what this is this is showing what would happen over 12 hours if the oil were released. And what you can see from this simulation, which keeps rerunning, is that within just a matter of a few days, this oil is going to travel a tremendous distance, and the complicated flows of water in the straits are going to make a cleanup even more difficult, which is why the Coast Guard said it really wouldn't even be possible. And you can see that the water at the bottom of the water column goes one direction, it goes east. The water at the top of the water column goes west, and so you'd have devastation, as I said, from Beaver Island over to Sheboygan. It's just within a matter of days we would see this oil travel all over the straits area.